Okay, so welcome again. Thank you for being here. I really do appreciate you taking an hour out of your day so that I can work with you on developing your professional skills using Google Sheets. Today, we're going to be working on advanced functions. Specifically, we're going to be looking at VLOOKUP, Xlookup, query functions, if-then statements, and there's a couple bonus ones that I want to show you as well. This is our tech team. I am on right here. My name is Alex Johnson Jimenez. I'm one of the digital learning coaches for Region 5, the CREC. My colleague Joel Leba is our IT specialist. And then we have my other colleague, Hector Valles, who's also one of the digital learning coaches here in Region 5. Any tech-related issues, concerns that you might have, collaboration that we want to engage in, all you have to do is just let us know, and we will be more than happy to work with you on spreadsheets, forms, Adobe Express, Canva, you name it. We will learn it if we don't know it so that you don't have to learn it, and we will work with you on that. The objectives for today, we are going to take a look at if-then functions, and you'll have the opportunity to practice. We're going to take a look at VLOOKUP, also known as vertical lookup. I obviously will explain what these do and how to use them and how to construct them in your workflow for both the business setting as well as an education setting. Then we will do Xlookup, which is a new feature. It's a new function in both Google and Excel. And a lot of these formulas and functions that we're going to be using today do pertain to both Excel and Google Sheets. The query function is a fan favorite. This has been requested several times, and I'll explain why this is such a neat function for us to use. And then obviously our closing, and we will be taking attendance as before. Please take a moment to ensure that you fill out the attendance form that I'm going to place in the chat at the end of our session so that we can collect that data. Now, before we begin, does anyone have any questions? Feel free to unmute and go ahead and jump in. Okay, let's go ahead and get started then. Let me walk you through. You should have a copy of the spreadsheet, and it looks just like this. So let me give you a walkthrough, and based on the conversations that we had in the previous tech bit on the basic formulas and functions, and the request was for a cheat sheet, I went ahead and created one in advance. So we got our tabs down below. You have a function cheat sheet, and I'll look at this as well with you, but this is what it's going to look like. It's going to give you the ability to really see the functions and how they work and what each part does, so that when you begin writing your own functions, you have a better understanding of what the lingo is and why you set it up in that manner. Okay. Let's go ahead and begin with the final, then the query, and then the practice, and this is where we will all do our work. Does everyone have a copy of this particular spreadsheet so that you can follow along and be able to do the work? If you do not, please just jump in and say so, and I will put another copy in the chat.
I'm so sorry, I was late and I don't have it.
Okay, no problem at all. Give me 1 second, and I will put it in the chat. Let's see. Where is my chat? Oh, there it is. All right, that should allow you to make a copy of the document so you can download and just kind of follow along. All right, so let's go ahead and get started then. We are going to begin with a bonus formula today. And then we're actually going to work right to left. So let me explain what we're going to accomplish by the end of our time together today. So this is the completed version of this, okay? And you're going to be able to fill this whole thing out by the time we are finished. Fingers crossed if we have enough time to do that. But this is the way that this works, and let me explain what these things do. Okay, so in column J right here, we have what's called percent change. And basically, this is a formula. And when we talk about formulas, remember that when we talk about formulas, we're talking about mathematics, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, exponents, parentheses, order of operations, all those things. That's what formulas mean. When we talk about functions, we're talking about Google Sheets or Excel, already understanding what it is that we want to accomplish, and it's packaged it into specific words. So if I wanted to add things, instead of adding B3 plus B4 and so forth, I can use a function called sum because I'm going to be adding. So that's the difference between those two, and I explained that in my previous tech tip. But percent change, what this basically does is it takes a look at the most recent value. In this case, the student got an 86, and then their first test, they got an 82. And so what it does is it evaluates whether or not the student made growth in between these two points of data. And in this case, the student went from an 82 to an 86. So they had a growth of 4.8%. Not much growth, but some nonetheless. This student, for example, didn't make any growth at all. So you see 88 and 88. This student went down from 86 to 75. And so you can see that this percent also went down. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to write that. And this is very useful, obviously, in a classroom setting. But if you also are looking at a business setting, this can be very useful when you're talking about if you're looking at money, if you're looking at accounts and things of that nature, you can see if there's been a growth or change and so forth over time. So I had another person come in. There is a copy of the spreadsheet. So we're going to talk about percent change and how to write that formula. The next one right here is progress made. Did this student make progress? And yes, I could do the numbers right here. If it's a positive, it's yes, they made progress. And if it's a negative, no, they didn't make any progress. But so I'm going to show you two different things. One is the formula and one is a function that evaluates if this is true, then give me this answer. If it is false, then give me this answer. So this is one of the formulas that we're going to be working on today. And if I double click on it, let me make the screen a little bit bigger so you can see this. I will be showing you exactly how to write this right here. Let's scroll over a little bit. So here is one of our very first functions that we're going to be evaluating. It's basically saying, if this is bigger than this, the student made progress. So write yes. If this is not bigger than this, then the student did not make progress, then write no. And I'll explain how to write that script and how you can modify it to your specific needs as well. The next one that we're going to do is then we move into VLOOKUP, which means vertical lookup. And here's what this is, what this does. So what this does right here, and the formula is located right in here, and I will explain exactly how this works. But basically what this is doing is taking a look at the grade of the student, what they received on their test or quiz, whatever the case might be. And if you're a classroom teacher, you already have your score range right on the side, maybe on a piece of paper, maybe it's on another tab, whatever the case is, you have your range right here. Now, without this, a teacher would have to say, okay, 86 falls between 81 and 89, that's a B, they would write B here. 75 falls between 71 and 80, and that's a C, so they will write C there. So you can see how cumbersome that can be over time when you have 120 students, 30 students, whatever the case might be. On the business side, we can use the VLOOKUP if I want to be able to look up very specific information from a database of information. So if there's a match, it'll bring back that information. So you don't have to be going back and forth and filtering, trying to figure out if there's a match. So as an example, let me show you this right here. So let's change this 86 to, let's say, a 52. Well, we know that a 52 is going to be within this range. So that student this should automatically change to an F. And there it is. So since it changed to an F, you automatically see that this changed to a no, and you see that the percent change went from 11 gain to minus 36. The beautiful thing about doing this is that once you've already done these formulas and functions across the top, you only have to do them once, because then you can copy them straight down, and now it's dynamic. So if you made a mistake and you need to change a grade or a value, it'll automatically change everything for you. So that's the beautiful thing about writing these functions and formulas at the very beginning. It's a little bit of work at the top, but once you have them set, then you just kind of sit back and watch the data change automatically. Are there any questions before I continue? Okay, let's continue then. Now, the reason I'm going to show you two different kinds of VLOOKUPs, this one right here is different than the other one that I will show you. And the reason that this is different, I want you to see the language in this. And I'll explain the if error in just a bit, but basically ignore the if error for a second. When we do the VLOOKUP, it says to look up this information. I want you to look up G2, which is this value right here. And when we write it, I will explain exactly what we're doing. I want you to look at the value in this cell right here, which is G2. And I want you to look for this value over here in this table. You see it with the outline right here. And so it begins on M2 to N6. So basically what the formula is saying is, see if you can find 52 in this table. If you find 52 in this table, see the comma right there? I want you to bring back the value located in the second column of this table. So here's column 1, and this is column 2. So if you find a 52 here, then bring me the value that is associated with that specific value, which is in column 2. Okay. Now, right here, this is where it might get a little bit confusing, but I do explain it in the cheat sheet. If we put true, because what you see right here is the lowest score that a person can get and still get an F is 50. The lowest score they can get is 61 before they get a D and so forth. If I put true, what the function does then, speaking Spanish, I've been speaking Spanish some of the day today, so pardon me if I slip up with my English today. But what ends up happening is that the formula will evaluate what I want. So it's going to look for 52, and it's going to look in here. But I don't want it, it's too cumbersome and complicated to write a formula for every single possibility of a value here. So what the term true does right here is it evaluates to the nearest. What is the closest number to the one that you're looking for? So in this situation, I'm looking for 52. I don't have an exact match, but what's the closest to 52? Oh, it's 50. And because it's 50, it returns an F. Okay. Oops. Do that. Okay. And the reason I explain that is because it's a little bit different than this one over here. And in this situation, we are going to be looking at, did my screen just froze? Let me stop sharing for a second. That was bizarre. My screen just froze. All right. While I'm trying to figure this out, does anybody have any questions? Okay, that's bizarre. It's all right. It's part of the whole process, right? You got to roll with it. Let me refresh this and see if that works. Okay, and over here, it's still exit page. All right, let's try this again. Okay, and it looks like we're back. Sorry about that. Okay, in this VLOOKUP right here, here's what I want. And if you are a classroom teacher, you work with teachers, or if you work in a business setting, you likely have access to a student management system that has all the students' ID numbers, their names, their email addresses, their phone numbers, their family's home address, et cetera, and so forth. And so the way that this VLOOKUP works is over here on the right-hand side, I've basically copied my student management system, or if I'm in a business setting, I might have my employee's ID number. I might have my employee's name, email addresses, phone numbers. You see, it's kind of basically the same thing. What I've done is I've copied that information from that database onto these cells over here. And this is where I'm going to be looking for that information. Automatically, it's going to do this. One thing to note is that this information right here doesn't have to reside on this tab. It can reside on a completely different tab, and you can hide it so nobody can see it except you. But I just put it here just so that we can reference it much more easily. If you want to know how to put it on a separate tab and hide it, I'm happy to show you how to do that. But let me walk you through what this does. So the formula here basically says, I want you to look for Marisol, the name Marisol, let me make it bigger. I want you to look for Marisol, which is in B2. And I want you to look in the table, which is in U2 to V134, and which is way over here. And you see it highlighted on the purple. Look in these two. If you find Marisol, here it is. If you find Marisol, the name Marisol, then bring back the value in the second column, column 1, column 2. So if I have Marisol, it's going to give me Marisol's email address, which is family1@email.com. Now here's where we put false. If I put, the reason I put false is because I want an exact match to Marisol's name. This is really important. Whereas before we wanted like an approximation, right? With the grade, the closest to this is this. Okay, so give me this answer. The problem is if I put true here and I have Maria, Maria is the closest to Marisol. And so if that's the case, it'll bring me Maria's family's email. And if I'm sending an email about poor attendance or whatever the case is, it's going to go to the wrong person. And then you're starting to violate, you know, some of the confidentiality and whatnot. So we want accurate, exact matches to happen. That's why we have the word false in there. And that's really critical for us to understand. So that is so we have two different VLOOKUPs. We have one that uses the true, which is an approximation value. And then we have one that uses, one that uses false, which is an exact value. And then we have what's called Xlookup. And this is the last one that we're going to be looking at today. Xlookup looks a lot like VLOOKUP, but in all honesty, it's much better and it's easier to manage. And the reason for this is that VLOOKUP has been around for a long, long time. The biggest constraint with it is, however, that when you have a table, like this, and I wanted to find Marisol's email address, I could do VLOOKUP without a problem because VLOOKUP starts on the left side and it goes to the right. So it can only recall information that's to the right of the value I'm looking up. So if I'm looking up the student's name, the only thing I can bring back is the email address because that's on the right. If I try to use VLOOKUP to find the Marisol's ID number, it would fail because it doesn't know how to do that. Xlookup is why it's better because Xlookup can go left or it can go right. It doesn't matter which direction. And the only reason that I'm showing you VLOOKUP when Xlookup is so much better is that if you get a spreadsheet from a colleague or whomever, and they have used VLOOKUP, I want you to have a basic understanding of how it works. So if you have to troubleshoot it because it doesn't look right, then you know what you're looking at. But if you're writing your own, I strongly recommend you just use Xlookup because it's faster and it's more convenient, okay? The last formula, the last one that we are going to do, and like I said, this is one that was requested on several occasions, is the query function. So in this situation, I have a classroom, I'm teaching science, whatever the case is. I have 8th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade students. I have all the test scores right here and so forth. But what if I wanted to look up just my 6th graders? What if I wanted to put all my 6th graders in just one spot so that I can look at their data? This is where the query function comes in handy. And so what this formula does, and this is a biggie, and I will show you again how to do that. What this formula does right here, it basically says, go to the tab where you have all your data. And from there, I want you to copy everything from cell A2 to J. If in column D, it says 6th. Yes?
What's up?
Anybody have a question? I thought I heard somebody.
Hello.
I think Charlotte's on unmute.
Oh. Charlotte, could you mute, please? So let me restart that. So the query basically says, go to this tab where all your data is, and I want you to copy everything if in column D, that's what the D is, in column D, if you see D, if the grade is 6th grade. And if it matches, it's going to copy just the 6th grade students, okay? In a business setting, like at the region 5 or any of the regions, if you have a bookkeeper who's keeping track of all the travel that the digital learning coaches are doing, or the UDL coaches are doing, or the structural literacy coaches are doing, and you have a column where you put their department, you can see where this is going. I can do a query function to bring in all my structured literacy student colleagues into one tab, my UDL into another tab, and I can keep that information. The neat thing about this, it is also dynamic. So I want you to draw your attention to this particular student right here in cell 2. They have 88 and 88. They didn't make any progress. The percent is 0. But if we go over here and we change this to, say, 72, and then we go over here, it automatically updates. So this tab is dynamic. So anything I do on the master gets transferred immediately to the separate tabs for my different departments or different groups of students. Okay. So we're going to cover all this, and you're going to be able to write these things. And if you have questions, please feel free just to jump right in. Okay. Now, before we start, does anybody have any questions? Okay.
Alex, can you show me that again? That what you did there, going from one sheet to the other?
You bet. Okay, so and I'm gonna take you through the whole process, but let me just explain it real quickly again. Okay.
Okay.
Let me make this a little bit bigger. 150. Okay. So I create a tab, and I'm going to call it 6 because I want just my 6th grade students. So what this function does, called the query function, what it does is basically it looks for some information, right? This information has to match. If it matches, then basically filter all that information, all the occurrences that match, and bring them someplace else. And that's what we want to do. So when we do this, I'm telling it right here, this part right here says, I want you to go to this tab where all my data is, and I want you to copy everything from cell A2 to J, because that includes everything that I've collected, but only do that if the information in column D, and you see the D right here, in column D says 6th. And if it says 6, then bring all that information into this tab. So you can imagine, like I said before, you can imagine how you could do this if this information is, if column D says UDL, bring all the UDL people here. If it says structured literacy, bring them all into this particular tab. And I'm going to show you how easy it is, because the beautiful thing about this is that once you've written the formula once, it's very, very easy to duplicate it and just modify one tiny thing. Okay, does that help? Okay, so let's go ahead and
Alex, that did help. I'm sorry, I couldn't get off mute fast enough. Yes, that did help. Thank you.
Okay, and like I said, we're going to write it from scratch so that you can see how that works. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
So let's go to the classroom example practice, and we are going to write these together. I'm going to show you what I'm writing, and then I would like for you to copy it exactly as I do it so that you can see it happening in real time on your device as well. So we're going to begin with the easiest of them all, beginning on the right-hand side and then moving to the left-hand side. So we're going to begin with percent change. So I'm going to click in this cell right here. And basically like I said before, I want to evaluate if test 2, I'm going to do the change in percentage of growth or not between test 2 and test 1. So here's how we write that formula. I'm going to make this even bigger so you can see more clearly. Right there. Okay. All formulas and all functions begin with an equal sign. This is a formula because it's mathematical. You are going to be able to use formulas and functions jointly. Okay. And I'm going to show you that when we do the if-then statement, because some people have the idea that you can only use one or the other, but that's not true. You can use both of them separately, but you can use them together as well. So all formulas and functions begin with an equal sign. So equals, parentheses, because I need order of operations. I need to do this part first, and then I need to do another part. If I didn't do this, you get a completely wrong answer. So the easiest way to do this is equals, parentheses. I'm going to click in cell G2. And you see how it appears right there. I'm going to subtract E2. So I'm going to subtract, so basically I'm taking the most recent value, in this case is a test, and I'm going to subtract the first value, which is a 75, close parentheses. And then I'm going to divide that by the first value. So once again, equals G2, your most recent data point. I'm going to subtract the very first data point, and then I'm going to divide by the first data point. So you see it listed right there. That is percent change. That is how you tell if there was growth made or if there was no growth made using percentages. And once I have this in place, I'm going to hit return. Google Sheets and Excel have gotten much smarter over the years. And what you see right here is an example of that. Google Sheets has taken a look at the formula that I just wrote in J2, and it says, hey, it looks like you kind of want to do the same thing for the entire column. Is this true? And yeah, it is. So in that case, I would click on the checkbox. Now, if I do the checkbox, it automatically populates for all of them, and I don't have to do it again. That's the beautiful thing about writing the formula once, clicking a button, and now it's already calculated it for everyone. Now, for a moment, let's say that that didn't pop up, because sometimes it pops up and sometimes it doesn't. Say it did not pop up. So do I have to write it again for this one, and this one, and this one, and so forth? No, you don't. Because right here, if you were joining me for the other tech bit, you would know that these values right here, these cell references are relative, meaning that when I drag this down, it's going to change rows. It's going to change to the next row. So here's how you do that. Click right there. The lower right-hand corner, you see a little dot or a little square. This is my handle. As soon as I move my cursor right over it, I click on it. I drag it. You see how I'm dragging straight down. Release. And now I have my percentages. This is kind of wonky though. I mean, it's not very useful because it's just a string of numbers. And the reason for that is it's calculated as a decimal point, right? Because that's what percentages are. So how do I change it to make it more legible? So I'm going to click on J to highlight the entire column. I'm going to navigate over to this area right here, and you see the percentage button right there. Click on that once. And now we have our percentages in this format. But I want to round it to the nearest whole number. So if I go one to the right, you see decreased decimal places. I'm going to click it once, I'm going to click it twice. And now I have my percentage changes in a way that's much easier to understand and see. Take a moment and try that. I'll hold that for a second and then I'll go on to the next thing. I'm going to double click right here so you can see the formula. For those of you who were doing it as I was doing it, did that work for you? Yeah, all right, fantastic. So you see how easy this becomes then to make your work much more efficient, because you write the formula one time, you copy it, and then it automatically changes. Because if I go in and go ahead and try this, go to test 2 and change it to 98. You see there's a percent growth of 31% now. It's just automatic anywhere. So let's say this student went from a 52 to a 100. That's a 92% growth. It just changes automatically for you, and you don't have to do anything except if you made a mistake with inputting their scores, then you can do this, okay? In another tech bit, I will show you how to do quizzes and things of that nature in Google Forms, where you don't have to even put in the data yourself. It just automatically does the data input for you for the values, okay? But that's a topic for another conversation, okay? All right, let's move on to progress made. And in this situation, and I'm going to show you why this is really kind of a neat feature, and it works in tandem with the percent change. So right here, I'm going to use the if statement. So I'm going to use equals if. So basically we're saying, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to see if this is true. And if the evaluation, if the criteria says it's true, then I want you to write this in this particular cell. And if it's not true, then write this in this particular cell. That's what we're trying to accomplish. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to do if, parentheses, all functions equals function name versus parentheses every single time, regardless of the function. All right. So what I want is to evaluate. Is test 2 greater than test 1? Okay, so here we go. Test 2, my greater symbol on my keyboard, you'll see it on the low right-hand corner with the shift key, greater than test 1. So here's it is. So I'm saying if, okay, check, is this true? Comma. If it's true, I want you to write yes, they made progress, or yep, or great, or absolutely fantastic, good work. Whatever it is that you want to write in there, you can. The only caveat is that you have to do it in quotation marks. So you got to do quotation marks. I'm going to put yes, close quotation marks. That's my if true statement. You see right here, this is where we are. You see how this is highlighted green? This is where we are. So this is a nice little guide that tells you where you are in your function creation, comma. What if it's not true? What if they didn't make progress? Then I want you to write no. Quotation mark, no. Close quotation mark. And then basically I'm done. And it says the last thing that I need to do is to close this. So one more time, equals function name, parentheses. Is test 2 greater than test 1? If yes, if it's true, put yes. If it's false, put no, hit return. And so again, like before, Google Sheets is saying, hey, it looks like you want to do this for this entire column. Is that true? And the answer is yes. So I'm just going to do my checkbox. And there it is. How can we double check this is true? Well, 75 to 98. 98 is bigger. Yes. Positive 31. 88, 86 to 53 is a decrease. So my if statement is false, right? So it's no. So you see how this works right very easily right away. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller because I want to show you something. Oops, not that small. Sorry. If I decide that I want to see just my students, I'm going to create a filter. And if I just decide that I just want to see all the students that said that did not make progress, I could do this now. Now I've hidden all my students that made progress, and now I can focus in on the students that did not make progress. So that way I can reassign, reteach, what have you, for these particular students. Conversely, I can say, who are the students that made progress? I can filter it now and say, yes, okay, these students need a little bit of enrichment. They look like they're making really significant progress and so forth. So that's how you can actually use multiple things at once. I'm using my filters after I've used my if-then functions. Any questions before we continue?
I have a question. I see the if-then function on the function cheat sheet, but did you do the progress change? I mean, the percentage change
Oh, on the cheat sheet?
on the cheat sheet?
No,
Or is
I
that
did
something?
not. I did
Okay.
not, but you know what? Thank you for bringing that to attention, Charlotte. I will put it in there. And when I send the recording out, I'll have a new download of this particular file, so it'll have that for you, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alex,
Okay.
this is Terry. So I'm still trying to figure out where the greater than symbol is on the keyboard. Where
Okay.
is it?
So on the lower left-hand corner, of your keyboard, you'll see your shift symbol, yes?
Yes.
Okay, next to it to the left, you'll see a question mark and a slash. Next to it, you'll have the greater than on top and then the period on the bottom. So if you do shift and then that key on your keyboard, it should give you the greater symbol.
Which key? I don't see it on the keyboard. On the standard keyboard, it's there?
Yep, on the standard keyboard, you'll have shift in the lower right-hand corner. Let me see, I don't know if you can see.
Oh,
me.
I see where you're going, yes.
So
Let me see
did
if
you
that's
find it?
No,
Okay, so.
again, shift on the right, and then I see the little symbols up and down and to the right and left. Is that one of them?
So shift and then, no, shift and to the left of shift, you'll see the question mark.
Ah,
And then one more, you'll see the greater symbol.
so shift and then the greater. Okay, let me see if I can do it. Thank you.
Of course. All right, so let's go ahead then and move on to the first VLOOKUP where we're looking for an approximate value. Okay, I'm gonna make this bigger once more. Okay, so in column H, in column G, we have the student's scores. Now we need to bring their grade. So let's go ahead and write that formula. I'm going to move over here so you can see everything. And you notice these are not, these are all zeros because it's these, if you were with me the other day, you'll know that these are actually counting how many F's are in this column, how many D's are in this column. And as it counts, these numbers change. And as they change, they create the graph that I'll show you how to create. And as well, it automatically begins to construct the percent change. So let's go ahead right here and do our VLOOKUP, our very first one. So equals VLOOKUP, spell it correctly, open parentheses. Okay, so the first thing says the search key. Basically what this is, what is it that you want me to look for? Okay, I want you to look for this number. Okay, cool. You want me to look for 98? Yes, comma, range. Where do you want me to look for this? I want you to look in this table right here. And the table is a range, right? So it's going to be, I'm going to click and hold on 50, drag to the F and come straight down right there. So now I have all of this. All right, fantastic. You want me to look for 98 in this table? Yes. Now, before I continue, very important that since I'm going to be dragging this formula down, the only thing I want to shift is my G2, right? I want, when I switch it to this student down here, I want it to look for this 98. And when I go down here, I want it to look for this 65. But where do I want it to look at? In this column, in this table right here. So for that reason, this is where I need to make it absolute. So I double click right here to highlight it. Function key on your keyboard, F4 at the top. You see the dollar signs? $sign column, $sign row. Now what this has done is fixed this in place. So when I copy my formula down, it will always reference this table. Comma. All right, so you want me to look for 98, you want me to look in this table, and if I find it, what do you want me to do? I want you to give me the value in the second column, which is the letter value. So this is column 1, this is column 2. If I had 5 columns right here and I wanted the value in the 5th column, then that number would be 5 because it's the 5th column where it has the value that I want. But in this case, it's just 2 columns. So I put 2. Okay, so look for 98, look for it over here. You want me to bring back the letter. Do you want me to kind of match it, or do you want me to just match it exactly? Well, since we're talking about ranges, I want you to kind of match it or find the nearest value to what I'm looking for. So in this case, I write the word true. Close parentheses. Did that explanation make sense to everyone? Do you need me to explain that again? Okay, so what you notice here then in the formula is that the only thing that's not absolute is my G2, because when I copy this down, I want this to change to G3, to G4, to G5, because those are all different student scores. But I always want it to look in the same place for the grade. So when I hit return, there it is. 65 is closer to 61, so therefore it's a D. 53, the closest to 53 is 50, so there's my F. So now I click checkbox. And now I have it. And now if I change this grade to 51, it automatically changes the letter grade. So instead of having to go through and figure out what value goes there, the VLOOKUP formula does it automatically for you. Okay, so I showed you how to do this one. Now do this one. I'm going to write the very first part, but then I'd like for you to try it on your own. Okay. Now, as a reminder for the function keys on your keyboard, in the lower left-hand corner, so keyboards come in all flavors. Most keyboards have a very top row where you see escape on the upper left-hand corner, then you see an F1, an F2, an F3, F4, and above those you have other symbols like the increase the brightness of your computer, or to mute yourself, or to increase the volume or decrease the volume. So those keys serve multiple purposes, okay? And this is the same thing that works when you do the shift key and type in the letter A, now it's capital letter. If you remove the shift key and just type in A, now it's lowercase. The function key basically does the same thing. So when I push on the function key and F4, function F4, that puts the dollar signs in the range or those cells to ensure that it is an absolute fixed value, okay? So let's go ahead and write that. Equals VLOOKUP, open parentheses. Where do I want to look? What value is it that I want to look? I want somebody to unmute and tell us. What cell do I need to look at?
E2?
E2, there it is right here. I want you to look for this value, all right, comma. Where do I want to look at? Where am I going to look for that 75?
M2?
M2 starts here, and I continue through all of this right there. So it begins in M2, I click here, and I drag to F, and then I go all the way down because I wanted to look for all of that information, right? Because I know that it's probably here, so I wouldn't just click here because the next student is 88, and that's going to be someplace else. So I wanted to look in everything. I want you to look in all of these rows and columns that I'm selected right here. Now, function key, F4. Now I put the dollar signs on there. Now it is fixed. So when I copy this formula, it's always going to reference that table. Okay, cool. So I'm looking at 75. I'm looking in my table right here. If it finds a match, which column should it return? Column 1 or column 2?
Column 2,
Column
the
2.
grade value.
Yeah, exactly. Because we want, that's what we want, right? We want the letter value. We don't want the number value. We want the letter value. So we put the 2 right there. That's the second column that has that information. Comma. Do we want it to be exactly 75, or do we want the closest to 75?
Closest.
The closest, exactly. So then for that case, we're going to write true. Close parentheses, hit return. Voila, there you got it. And now try it. Change one of those values to a different number. 84 automatically changes. And if you scroll over here, you see this is already populated. because this has a formula that's counting all my Fs. This is counting all my Ds, all my Cs in test 1 and also in test 2. And then this has the formula we already wrote right here. And it says, hey, look, we dropped our Fs from 26 to 15. That's a change of 42%. That's pretty amazing. That's great. And we increased our Bs by 60%. So it's a matter of how you look at your data, because when we normally see a negative 42, we think, oh, that's bad. No, this is actually pretty good. So you just have to understand what the data is trying to tell you. All right, we're at our second to the last formula, our Xlookup. I'm sorry, we still have one more VLOOKUP right here. The email addresses. All right, equals VLOOKUP, open parentheses. I'm trying to find email addresses for these students. So what is the search key? Where am I going to look first? We're going to look for the student's name, right? That's what we want to do. We want to find the student's name. And if we find a match, then we want to return their email address. So the search key is what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for Marisol, which is B2, comma. You see the pattern, it's exactly the same thing. The only thing that's going to be different in this formula is that instead of saying true, we're going to say false because we want an accurate match. So where is the table? Well, the table is way over here. So I'm going to scroll over here. You see the formula follows me. It's right here. It follows me. I'm going to click on Marisol, click and hold, go to T, and I'm going to go all the way down because I have a lot of students right here. Release. Now I see, look for the name in cell B2. I want you to find that name in this table, table S2 to T83. Function F4 to lock it. If it finds Marisol's name, which column should it return? 2, because that's where the email address is. That's what I want. 2, comma. Do we want it to be accurate or do we want it to be as close as possible? We want it to be accurate. So we want to write the word false. Close parentheses, return. And yep, this is true. I'm gonna click OK. Inevitably, somebody's gonna say, wait a minute, wait, hold your horses right here. Why do we have this right here? Why is there an error right there? Anybody want to take a guess why that might be?
Is it a nickname instead of like the full name, maybe?
It could be a nickname. And that's something that's very important for us to understand is that when we do our data collection, we have to be accurate, right, in our data. And if I put Bob instead of Robert and the student's name is actually Robert, and I have Robert over here, and I put Bob over here, it's not going to match. It's not because it's not that smart, right? It's looking for an exact match. So, or this is a new student, right? And so I need to change that to accommodate that new student. But let's say that this is actually not Bob, this is actually Eli. So if I do Eli, there's Eli. And it found the match and it put that there. Okay. So those are the things that you really kind of have to pay attention to when you're looking at your data, is to make sure that you're not using nicknames, that you allowed yourself to be able to provide for extending your data set as well. All right, last one is Xlookup. Let's do this one really quickly. Equals Xlookup. And the syntax is a little bit different. So it says, okay, what do you want me to look for? Well, I want you to find the student's name. Okay, here's the student's name. This is where it gets different from VLOOKUP. Now it says, in which column, look up range, look up the range. I want you to find the name. In which column are the students' names located for me to look at? So I'm going to scroll over here. Students' names are located in column S. So I'm going to click, drag this down. So find the name Marisol in the column where all the students' names are located. F, function F4 to lock it, comma. All right, if I find Marisol, where's her student ID located? Well, you see how in this way we're going to the left instead of the right? Click right here, drag it down. Function F4, parentheses. That's the way Xlookup is written. I want you to, B2, find this name. Where is this name located? Where are all your names located? Oh, they're all located in column S. Okay, cool. If I find it, where is that student's ID number? Oh, they're located in column R. And that's just what I wrote. That's exactly what I wrote right there. So when I hit return, scroll up, there is her ID number, the student's ID number. And in this case, you can do one of two things. I can double click on it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If I double click on it, there it is. And Bob doesn't have an ID number because it didn't find it, right? Didn't find Bob. That's why there's still an error there. Did that make sense? This is, do you see why? I'm sorry, one question at a time. Did that make sense? But I hope that you see that how Xlookup is actually much easier, because you're just like, look for this. I want you to look for this value in this column. And if I find that value in that column, what other column do you want me to give you as a response back? So it's really just three things that you need, as opposed to this, a range, a column number, and true or false. Okay, there are no questions. We've got 6 minutes to do the query formula. All right, so let's go ahead and do the query formula then. We're going to create a sheet where we're going to put that query. So on the lower left-hand corner, you'll see the plus sign right here in the lower left-hand corner. I'm going to click on that plus sign. It gives me a blank sheet. I'm going to double click on the name. It's going to highlight it, and I'm going to put 6 students. And the reason to put 6 students instead of 6 is you can't have 2 tabs named the same thing. They have to be unique names. So 6 students. Go ahead and do that. So what I did was I clicked on the plus sign in the lower left-hand corner. It gave me a sheet. Yours might be sheet 2, 3, 4, 5. It might be any number. And then I double clicked on the tab, and then I just typed in a new name for that sheet. This is where I'm going to bring in my 6th grade students. So I'm going to go back to classroom practice, and here's why I'm doing this. I'm going to copy the headers because I don't want to deal with this. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to select them all, edit, copy, just the headers, nothing else, none of the values, just the headers. So I selected them all. I went to edit, and I chose copy. I'm going to go to my 6th tab, and in cell A1, I'm going to do edit and paste. Same headers in the same location, because I don't want to make any mistakes of putting things in the wrong place. Okay, now let's write our formula. I'm going to make this even bigger so that you can see, because it's a little complicated. So in here, A2, I'm in the 6 students tab, A2 equals query, open parentheses. All right, so here's how this works. This is where you need to be really careful and pay attention to what you're doing, because it's very easy to just click in the wrong place and then you kind of have to start over. So equals function parentheses. I want you to look for information on my master sheet, which is my classroom example practice. So what I'm going to do, this is still open. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to click on that tab, and it switches me to that tab. Okay. Now I actually want cell A2, but the problem is that the formula is kind of hiding cell A2. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to click in cell A3, and then I'm going to manually change it. So I'm going to click on cell A3, and you see how this populates right there. The apostrophe, classroom example practice, apostrophe, exclamation mark. That is the way that Google Sheets, and that's the way that Excel identifies the sheet names. Okay. And I clicked on cell A3, but I don't want cell A3, so I'm going to change that to a 2. Let me see. Now I want to copy everything from cell A2 all the way to J because I want my percentage change too. So I'm going to do colon J. I think I'm working my computer a little too hard. It looked like it froze again. I'm sorry. Let's try that again. This, okay. Equals query. Go over here. Cell A3, just to get you back where we were. Change that to a 2 colon, and I want to go all the way to J because that's where the rest of the data is. So I'm going to put J. So basically what I'm saying is I want you to look at this entire spreadsheet from cell A2 to J, all right? And what I want you to do is look at all this data, and then I want you to find where cell D or column D has all the grades. And so all the grades are in column D right here. So now I do comma, and I'll make this a little bit bigger in just a second. And I begin telling them what to do with quotation marks. Select asterisks. Now, there are easier ways to write this, but again, this is basically like old school and a lot of people still write them this way. So I just want to give you a heads up on how this works. Select where, and I'll make it bigger so you can see what I'm typing, where column D equals. Now we want our 6th graders. So 6th is actually text. It's not a number. If it was just the number 6, I would just write 6 here. But since 6th is considered text, I have to do a apostrophe, 6th apostrophe, quotation marks, close, return. Let me make this bigger.
Alex, can you put that formula in the chat box?
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. There it is. The key to here is the comma right here, quotation marks, and anything we have in quotation marks is always going to be considered text. Okay, it's going to be considered text. So select, asterisk means select everything, where column D, which has my grades, is 6th grade. And because it's text, we did the apostrophe, 6 apostrophe, close quotation marks, return, and now it's my 6th grade students. It is 4:30, and as always, I want to honor your time. So if you need to go, feel free to go. I will share the video with you. If you want to stay to see how I can duplicate this for my 7th graders, I can do that in about 5 minutes. So it is completely up to you. I want to thank all of you for being here. I really, truly appreciate all of you. And so if you need to go, please feel free to go. And if not, we can finish this up in about 5 minutes. Okay. Here, so while this one was really kind of complicated, right? It's probably the most complicated one that we've written so far. The thing is that once you've written it, duplicating it is super easy, because here's what you do. Now I want to do it for my 7th graders, and then we'll stop. Right here on the tab, you see 6, and there's a little arrow that points down. If I click on it once, I click on duplicate. Now I have a copy of 6th grade. It's exactly the same as this one, but it's now labeled this. I'm going to double click. I'm going to change that to 7th grade students. Perfect. Now I have the information for 7th grade. Here's a really cool thing. And like I said, 2 to 3 minutes, and we can finish this up. If I click in the formula, you see that that's still 6, right? It still says 6th grade right there. Folks, all I have to do is come in here, change that 6 to a 7, hit return, and now I have my 7th graders. And that's it. And then I can repeat that for 8th grade, or if this was UDL, I could do UDL, I could do DLC, I can do structured literacy, I can do Hawthorne Elementary, whatever it is that I'm looking for, all I can do is make a duplicate and just change the value. And that's it. So folks, we started here, and we finished. We basically made it look exactly the same. Okay. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so very much. I apologize that we went 2 minutes over, but I do hope that you found this useful. It is hard. It can be tricky. That's why I put the functions right here in the cheat sheet, so it can kind of explains everything that we did and why we did what we did. To honor Charlotte's request, I will go ahead and put the percentage change. And when I send the video out, I'll send it out with a new link so that you can have the most up-to-date information. Okay. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Alex. Very
Thank
cool.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
You bet.
Do we have a sign in
Yes.
link?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Let me put that in there. I appreciate that. I get carried away and I forget all about that. Give me 1 second, and then you can do this at your convenience. And I will be sending you all certificates of completion, so you can, frame it or whatever you want to do with it. Okay. Thank you again, everyone.
Thanks, Alex.
Bye-bye. Have a good evening.
Bye.